Natty Geek 78 here to give you another great English tip that'll help you not only in English, but in life. Today we're going to talk about Annotate That, the breakdown. So, step number 1, you always want to focus first on the title. Now, as you can see here, we have the title, What We Know About School Kids and Coronavirus. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to make predictions about what you think the title is about. You want to give about a 1 to 2 word opinion about the title or any questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight some key terms. And remember, highlighting is nothing more than accentuating or bringing out something in a text. You want to make it noticeable. And I probably highlighted it a little too much. And the first thing I'm going to do is I never highlight without making a notation. I like to do arrows on my notations. So as you can see here, what I pretty much highlighted was that I highlighted my opinions. Well, kids and coronavirus, low risk, right? I put a question mark. And also, I put, are they spreaders? That's the question that I have. Are they asymptomatic? And then I realized, I also know that based on this word, what we know, that means there's things they don't know. So now that's step 1, focusing on the title. Step 2. Step 2, we're always going to number the paragraphs. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3. Turn it over. Looks like this paragraph is continuing from 3. So then I have 4, 5. Then I'm going to go up and 6. So that's step 2, numbering your paragraphs. Why do we want to number the paragraphs? Because when we number the paragraphs, it makes it easier for us to read the text. It also makes it easy for us to refer back to when we're having discussions and when we are trying to find textual evidence. So step number 2, number your paragraphs. Now, this step number 3, watch and read your headings. Tip number 1, headings are your friend. You always want to read the headings and the subheadings of any article, especially articles of the weeks and nonfiction text. Why? Because they typically state what that paragraph or what that section's topic is. So for example, our article of the week tells us this paragraph is going to answer this question: can children get COVID-19? Another reason why we always want to read the headings and the subheadings is because it allows you to see how the author organized and structured the text. That goes a long way in understanding their purpose and understanding their point of view. So step number 3, read the headings and the subheadings. Step number 4, decide on your system. Now, we're talking about things like color. So typically when I annotate, I have 2 different colors. I always use black and I always use blue. Sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling, I might even use a third color or green. So we have color, color, color. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you know what to block out. So sometimes I'll use boxes. I especially like to use boxes or circles when I am highlighting or underlining words that confuse me or really key points. I also like to use, as you can see, circles and arrows. I typically, whenever if I have a box or if I have a circle, it'll always typically go to an arrow pointing out to something in the margins that I want to do. I also like to use symbols. Typically my symbols are this. I'll have a question mark. Now the question mark is going to be for things that confuse me. So anything that confuses me, I focus on a question mark. The next thing I typically like to do is I like to do a P for purpose. Remember, we always want to read for meaning. So when I put a P, I feel like that piece of line from the text is helping me for my purpose for reading the text. I sometimes will use a double question mark for questions for the author or for the reader. So I'll include a double question mark for author questions and reader questions as if we're having a discussion, and then also for teacher questions. And then lastly, anything that interests me or stands out, I like to do an exclamation point. Now, VIP number 2, I believe, VIP number 2. You always want to create a key or a legend. Typically, if you are going to create a key or a legend, you want to do it somewhere up top where it doesn't get in the way of your annotations. And then you pretty much would identify what it's for, unless you have a good memory, and you can then go ahead and kind of finagle or memorize what your symbols are for. So that is step number 4. Decide on your system and stick to it. So step number 1, work on the title. Step number 2, number your paragraph. Step number 3, read the headings. Headings are your friend. And step number 4, decide on your system. Make sure you create a key. All right, now the next VIP, remember the purpose of your highlighter. Now, remember I said a highlighter is designed to accentuate. So I could highlight certain things. However, if I don't make a note in the margins, remember, if all you're doing is highlighting, all you're doing is coloring. Highlighters you're going to highlight to accentuate something, but you have to know why you're accentuating. Remember, your annotation is about your thoughts. If you highlight something, you had a thought, make sure you write down the thought. All right, tip number 5. Pay attention to lists. An author sometimes, to prove their point, will list certain things. You want to make sure that you not only pay attention to the list, but when the author makes the list, you want to make sure that you write down those lists near the paragraph. Now, for example, in paragraph 3, why are children less vulnerable? The first thing I would do is I would probably circle the word vulnerable, because I like to circle words that confuse me or unknown words. Of course, in this article of the week, you have several bolded words that you have to focus on. So the next thing I would do is, as I'm reading the article, I'm still making my marks. Why is it a huge puzzle? Oh, here's another unknown word. And I could even go one step further and putting a question mark over it. But then as I read, it's a huge puzzle, says Nicholas Davies, an epidemiologist at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. But there are several theories. One is that children's cells have fewer of the ACE2 receptors. This sounds like a technical term. I really don't know what that technical term is. So I know I need to look that up because I want to know. But there are several theories. When you see phrases like this in an article, there are several theories, there are several reasons. You know it's a list. So right over here, I'm going to list theories and I'm going to write them out. Why is this important? Because on a lot of standardized tests, they'll ask you, list all the reasons. One of these reasons is not what they said. Why not just have a list of those reasons? So step number 5, pay attention to lists. And your next VIP for this, always write them in the margins right next to the paragraph. All right, your last and final one. So you have finished reading the article. You've annotated it. You've written in the margins. You've highlighted. The next thing, summarize and decide. You want to, in 1 to 2 bullet points, maybe 2 to 3, you want to create 3 bullet points that summarizes or sums up what you just read. Now, you can do this in both nonfiction and fiction. This video is particularly for nonfiction and informational text. You want to summarize up what you read. No more than 3 bullet points. This will go a long way to helping you identify the author's central idea, the author's purpose, the author's POV, and you'll be able to figure out if the author was made their argument. So after you summarize and detail, remember we want to summarize because of central idea, purpose, point of view, and if you were in a debate about the author, you could also debate, well, did they prove their point? So those are all reasons why summarizing 3 details are important. The last thing you want to do is you also want to decide. Decide how you feel. Decide what your opinion is. Decide, do you agree with the author or do you disagree with the author? Make a decision about what the author was talking about. An author is always going to have 3 reasons why they write. And normally out of 10, they want to inform you, but they definitely want to persuade you. Decide, what did the author really inform you of? What did you know before going in, and now what new things do you know? And then also, did the author persuade you to their point of thinking? And then the last VIP is come up with a new title. If you were rewriting this article, what new title would you give it? So those are 6 steps to annotating a text. Now, when you use those 6 steps effectively, you end up typically with an annotated text that looks a little like this. Now, if you notice, I used a color coding system, and for words that confused me, I circled them in color and put a question mark. Now, I did not have a highlighter at the time, so for those of you that don't have a highlighter, you can always underline. But if you notice, whatever I underlined, I typically had a note. And I typically had my arrows going to. Then notice here, I put an exclamation point because that was something interesting, or just like, yeah, I know, or my emotion at the time. China. I always like to underline percentages and facts and statistics and where they come from. And then also look right here. Half as likely as just adults to get infected by the virus. I put a little arrow, I underlined it, put an arrow, and then put my thought. Because I'm interacting with the text. Even right here you can see hard hit states. I accessed some of my prior knowledge based on what I know about the news. I know some of the hard hit states are like Florida, Texas, California, New York. Also right here, notice, for every heading, I answered it. Right here, why are children less vulnerable? Age, vitality. Then also, if you notice, right here, inflammatory syndrome, fire, flaming heat. But that's another video for you to watch another time. Other than that, rewatch this video for any helps or tips. And as always, keep reading, keep writing, keep living, keep learning, keep growing.